Hello and welcome to the radiotimes.com Doctor Who podcast. My name's Hugh Fullerton and I am radiotimes.com's sci-fi and fantasy editor.
I'm Morgan Jeffrey and I'm radiotimes.com's executive editor.
And we're here, as we are every week, to talk about Doctor Who. Sometimes that means we're talking about the latest news in time and space. Sometimes it means that we're looking back at a classic episode, or just having a bit of a natter about some theories we have, some ideas we have, a new ranking of the Doctors, you know, what's the scariest monster, all that sort of fun stuff. We've been doing this podcast for a while on the radiotimes.com YouTube channel, but we've decided we're going to bring it to a wider audience. So if you're listening to us for the first time, hello. We've already introduced ourselves. And this week we're talking to you about some really exciting stuff because there's been a lot of Doctor Who news this week, hasn't there?
There has indeed, yeah. So we just had New York Comic Con, the virtual New York Comic Con, and there were a wide range of Doctor Who announcements across that. We got a first look clip and teaser and release date and some plot teasers for Daleks, which is the upcoming animated spin-off. There were also announcements about a couple of new Doctor Who video games, including The Edge of Reality, which is a sort of quasi-sequel to the previous VR adventure, The Edge of Time. And that's coming to consoles, I believe, early next year. And it's been at least a week since David Tennant has returned as the 10th Doctor. So he will be doing so again. But, you know, always happy to see him alongside Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor. So very exciting stuff.
Yeah. So there was loads of Doctor Who stuff coming out. There's also a Weeping Angels mobile game called Lonely Assassins, which I believe has Ingrid Oliver in. But the big news that we're here to talk about is they've finally released some details for the upcoming festive special, Revolution of the Daleks. So we've known about this special for a long time. They announced it back in March. They filmed it a very long time ago, back in, I think, October, November 2019, so pre-lockdown. And yeah, we kind of knew that it was coming, but we didn't really know anything about it. And we thought, you know, fingers crossed, maybe they'll say a line about it or two at this New York Comic Con. And actually, they revealed a lot more than I expected. You know, there were photos and they gave us a little plot synopsis. So I don't know. Should I just read the synopsis? I think that could be useful.
Let's go through it.
Okay. So they gave us two images, and then the synopsis said, "The upcoming festive special will see the return of one of the Doctor's biggest and most feared enemies, the Daleks." I mean, physically they're not that big, but we'll let that go. The Doctor is locked away in a high-security alien prison, isolated, alone, with no hope of escape. A very 2020 mood, in other words. Far away on Earth, her best friends, Yaz, Ryan and Graham, have to pick up their lives without her. But it's not easy. Old habits die hard, especially when they discover a disturbing plan forming, a plan which involves a Dalek. And how can you fight a Dalek without the Doctor? Roll credits. Revolution of the Daleks will air during the upcoming festive period on BBC One. So it's actually quite interesting because we kind of knew that the Doctor was in prison because that happens at the end of The Timeless Children, and we kind of knew there were going to be some Daleks involved, a bit of Dalek fighting. I kind of assumed, I don't know about you, that the Doctor would be out of prison pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm still sort of assuming that will be the case. Like, let's face it, this isn't going to be Shawshank Redemption in space. I think the Doctor will, you know, once the episode begins, will break out of prison pretty quickly because that's what we want to see. But what's going to be interesting is to what extent they explore kind of the backstory to this episode. You know, prior to this episode beginning, how long has the Doctor been in this high security alien prison between the end of The Timeless Children and when Revolution of the Daleks begins?
Definitely. I mean, to talk about a little bit about the main preview image they released from the episode, which hopefully you can see somewhere around this podcast. If not, it's online or it's on radiotimes.com. It shows Jodie Whittaker's Doctor in a kind of prison jumpsuit. She's looking a bit, I keep saying she looks unwashed, but she does. You know, that's fine. We've all been there in lockdown. And she's sort of scratching marks on the wall. So I actually did a bit of a deep dive on this on radiotimes.com, as is my wont. And I think it's quite interesting, this question of how long she's been there, because in the New York Comic Con panel, Jodie was asked, you know, what does a whole life sentence mean, which is what the Jadoon said at the end of the last episode, what the Doctor was going for. She said, we may discover that, or maybe we won't. And she also says, the clues in the photograph that I may have been there a while. So it's kind of interesting because in the photograph, as I said, there's all these scratches on the wall, which is kind of traditionally, you know, I'm in prison, this is how many days I've been here. There's a really great joke in Top Secret where he scratches out 20 marks, when he goes, "Thank God you're here. I've been in here for 20 minutes." So part of me wonders that, but it's kind of interesting because this is really, really specific. The marks are in groups of 8 with 2 crossed lines through them, which to me is like 10, right?
Or does that signify 8 and then just a cross, or is that 9 and the final mark is an X, or is that 10? It could be 8 to 10?
Yeah, because normally you do 4 lines and a cross for 5,
Yeah.
wouldn't you? You sort of say that. So I wonder if it's just doubling that, and then, if in that same way. I don't know why you do it in 10 unless you were there for maybe you started with 5 and you were like, God, I've been here such a long time. I'm just going to start. I'm going to commit to. It was a very pessimistic kind of rating after the first 9 days.
Or she's counting in rels, and that's how the Daleks do it.
I didn't even think of that. I didn't even think of whether there's some sort of Time Lord counting system. But in the picture, there's a lot of scratches. And it kind of made me wonder because, we could kind of assume these are days, right? In which case, I counted, and visible, there's around 40 scratches. You can presume there'd be a good few more behind Jodie Whittaker in the picture. I just didn't count any that I couldn't see. And obviously, she's in a room that's larger than that. We saw the cell, and so there could be exponentially more. So say she's been in there days. That could be she's been there for a couple of months, 3 months maybe, which is a pretty long time. That would kind of see how she is. Could be months. She could have been there a really long time, and each one of these things could be months. But then that seems like an odd thing to do in 10s. You think she'd do them in 12s, or just or it could be years, because this is the thing with the Doctor, right? We've seen the Doctor age centuries without a visible sign of aging. For example, Matt Smith's Doctor goes from 900 to around 1100 without a visible change in his age. He does age when he gets older than that again. When he hits 2000, he's looking a lot older, but that's possibly because it's his last incarnation at the time. We do get quite deep on this podcast if you're just tuning in. Yeah, so it's possible that the Doctor's been there a really, really long time. And then, obviously her companions are at home on their own. They can't live for centuries, but time travel. So the Doctor, from her perspective, could be in prison for a really, really long time and then get to them again a comparatively short time after they last saw her. I don't know. I mean, it could be it was a few days. So it certainly seems that the vibe seems to be that she's been there a while, right? I mean, just from the picture and everything.
No, I think you're right, and I think as you indicated earlier, it's totally a coincidence, because this was shot long before lockdown. It was shot towards the end of last year, and it's maybe not the cheeriest plot for the festive season, but the Doctor being locked away from her friends, away from her fam, is actually very timely. But also, I think it will be interesting just to see how time in jail has affected the Doctor, presuming it is quite an extended period she's been behind bars. And I do hope it's something that isn't just kind of, it's not a throwaway moment if she has been there for many, many years from her perspective, because I think Jodie's Doctor in particular, who's this real bundle of energy, it'd be really interesting to explore what being locked up for that long has kind of done to her, because the Doctor always has this wanderlust and is the eternal traveller. But I think with Jodie's Doctor in particular, it'd be really interesting to explore. You want the kind of the action adventure elements as well, but it would be interesting to see what confinement has done to the Doctor.
Definitely. I mean, again, like you say, it's sort of bizarrely timely in a way that wasn't intended, unless they've chosen to emphasize it after, in the cut that they eventually made. I do think it's interesting because, to be devil's advocate, there is sometimes a criticism of the show that it makes Jodie's Doctor a little too passive, and that she kind of just reacts to things and kind of doesn't always take charge in the way that we see other Doctors do. And I was thinking, it's kind of funny to see the Doctor actually go to prison, because the Doctor's constantly, especially in the classic series, being locked up in cells and then trying to work out how to escape, and then they escape. And then in the new series, they invented the psychic paper to kind of circumnavigate the Doctor getting arrested scenes. So it's funny that the Doctor gets captured and then just is in jail for a while.
Yeah, no, because and I think Russell T Davies said something along the lines of, someone was asking about the use of the sonic screwdriver, and he said, there's certain things you want to get in the Doctor's way, like these incredible villains and huge life-threatening incidents. That's what you want to get in the Doctor's way. You don't want a locked door to get in his way. His at the time. Yeah, that's really dull. So the thing about the sonic screwdriver is the Doctor can kind of go anywhere and do anything and escape from cells. And it's so that he can get to the more interesting parts of the story. However, I do think there is an interesting story to be told. In the Doctor actually for once couldn't get away and is having to do some porridge, space porridge.
I I do think it's funny because you see the Doctor transported to this cell in her full outfit, so presumably she might have the sonic screwdriver with her. And my initial thought was like, how are they going to explain that? And I was like, I'll just say it's deadlock sealed. And then I just thought, why doesn't everybody deadlock seal everything? It seems pretty universal.
Well, having used the sonic screwdriver as a way of then escaping from all cells, unlocking all doors, I think Russell T Davies then realised that actually he occasionally needed the Doctor to be trapped in a cell or not be able to get through a door. So sometimes there's a deadlock seal. Sometimes it's like, oh, it doesn't work on wood. It's like one of those things that you invent a rule and then immediately subvert the rule as soon as that rule becomes a pain.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, talking about how long she's going to be locked up, the synopsis there does seem to suggest that it's possible that she'll be out 5 minutes into the episode, right? Maybe it'll open with a daring escape sequence. We don't know. But it sort of seems like, based on the companion storyline in this episode, there's going to be a significant portion where she's away. A little bit like, I thought it reminded me of the Christmas Invasion, where David Tennant's out for the camp because he's just regenerated, and it's up to Rose, basically, to try and bluff her way through saving the universe. And the idea we have of the companions kind of trying to solve this mystery and take on a Dalek on their own, is pretty interesting. I mean, obviously, it's been established that Torchwood isn't around anymore, beyond what's going on in Big Finish, I think. And Unit isn't around because of budget cuts, which has, caused a bit of a furore in the last Dalek episode. And during the New York Comic Con panel, Mandip Gill and Bradley Walsh talked a little bit about where we sort of find the characters. And, Mandip Gill said, as characters, we don't know what's going on. We're back in Sheffield trying to get on with our own lives. Yaz is struggling a bit. We do then come across a plot to do with a Dalek, and we go, okay, she's taught us a lot of things, but how are we going to fight a Dalek without the Doctor? And then Bradley Walsh says, how do we, as a three, save mankind? Talk about being thrown in at the deep end.
But I again, like talking about allegations that have been sort of levelled at recent Doctor Who. I think one of the things as well that's been said is that sometimes it hasn't always, I think more so in Series 11, I think Series 12 did a better job of it, but sometimes the show hasn't always juggled having those three companions all that well, and they don't all get a decent showing in every single episode, which is it is tough to juggle four lead characters, especially when one of your lead characters is the Doctor. But actually this might be a really nice way, separating them from the Doctor might be a really nice way to center that trio of companions and have them, as you say, be a bit more proactive and take the lead.
Definitely. I mean, I think it worked quite well in Spyfall when they separated the Doctor and the companions, and to an extent in The Timeless Children as well. Like, I think that it's one of those things where it's suddenly that there being so many of them works because they have each other, whereas before, when you separate the Doctor and the companion, you need two whole sets of cast, if that makes sense. With this, you kind of need new cast for the Doctor to interact with. The TARDIS team, as we call them, do have each other. I do think it's interesting as well. So the other preview picture we have for this episode is of Yaz, Graham, and Tosin Ryan. He so inhabits the role.
He disappears into the role.
Yeah. Basically, they're kind of looking a bit worried sitting at a table, which is not the most dynamic sci-fi picture.
But this picture is not as dull as you may think, listeners.
Yeah, dun. So we've seen a few people online point out that there's a load of documents on the table, and obviously in true Doctor Who fan fashion, they've hit the old zoom button and gone and had a look at the documents. And the most interesting thing is it's upside down, but I had a quick look at it. There's a note saying MDZ or MDZ for our American listeners, must research. And I don't know if anyone remembers, but in the previous episode, we saw a Dalek in recent years, Resolution, which was a New Year's episode back in 2019. The company that had sort of brought up and assembled various Dalek pieces was called MDZ. So it seems like maybe they're slept something. I mean, I did think that was an interesting sort of drop plot thread in that there was a company sort of collecting these incredibly deadly weapons. And basically their only role in the episode before is it's where the Dalek mutant, goes to pick up a few bits in his shop. And then you kind of don't really see any of you see like one employee, I think, and that's kind of it. It's basically just a warehouse. So it's interesting to wonder whether this plot that they mentioned is maybe this company, getting back into the sort of Dalek game. And I did wonder, right, this is maybe a big extrapolation. So we've sort of seen unofficial photos and clips of what might happen in this episode. So we've seen a version of the Recon Dalek from Resolution, which is a bit nicer and shinier, which we've talked about on a previous version of the podcast. And we've seen the kind of more common these days, Gold Daleks, kind of having some sort of altercation. And I wondered whether there was a possibility that maybe somebody on Earth tries to build a Dalek, and then the real Daleks kind of come to protect their copyright.
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
because the Recon Dalek we've seen, the sort of new one in these sort of unofficial set photos, looks a lot more like the one that was around in Resolution, whereas the other ones look like we've seen them. So maybe that's because it's based on the thing they had, and maybe it's not a real Dalek, or maybe it is just a Dalek, and I'm talking nonsense. But
No, but
I did wonder.
It's an interesting theory about, for a little while there, you had the Cybersmen, the Cybermen,
Yes.
who were Cybermen created on an alternate Earth. So maybe we're getting almost the Dalek take on that. You're getting Earth-made Daleks going
kind
up
of reverse
against
engineered.
Yeah,
kind of reverse engineered Daleks, and then that could be the kind of the sort of thing we'd seen was a load of gold Daleks destroying that one Dalek. So maybe that's the twist where you think it's just going to be this one little Dalek, and then a load of gold ones descend, and then that's actually we need the Doctor now.
if that is the twist, we've just ruined it for you. But
we don't know.
This is pure speculation at this point. So
we don't have any insight. We don't know anything you don't. So in any sense, well, we might know some things, but we don't know anything secretive about Doctor Who that you guys don't. So this is just pure speculation, and it could be that whole thing was a misdirect. As Jodie Whittaker said, maybe they were filming a music video. Who knows?
Maybe.
It could also be that the MDZ thing doesn't mean anything, and it's there as a little Easter egg for us to kind of spot. I mean, Doctor Who is incredibly careful with these things. Like, for example, Sacha Dhawan as the Master was scrubbed out of, I think, pretty much all the images and preview clips of scenes where his character appeared before that episode aired. I think there was the top of his head could be seen in the background of one picture. And then I spoke to the BBC about that, and they were like, we were so annoyed about that.
Which I always thought was odd, because the big reveal of that episode is not that Sacha Dhawan is in it, it's that he's playing the Master. It would have, I think
it's
in
almost
many
more
ways,
suspicious that he turns up having not been announced.
It's more suspicious, exactly, because then you're like, wait, why didn't they announce Sacha Dhawan? I bet he's playing someone. I bet it's the Master. But
so it's, but then that makes me think, this has been put here for a reason. It's pretty, I mean, you have to zoom in a bit in sort of Doctor Who fan fashion, but it's pretty visible. So part of me wonders whether it's a bit of a red herring. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could be there as a kind of, I remember when they were filming Avengers Endgame, obviously very different sort of scale and everything, they put a load of fake sort of spoilers on set to try and throw fans off. And, when they were filming the end of Game of Thrones, they, filmed, they didn't exactly film fake scenes, but they had like random cast members walking about trying to throw people off. Yeah. So you do wonder if maybe this is something similar. Like, obviously this is a company they'd look into because they were involved the last time that they saw Daleks, these three. But maybe it's just that they're just going to look into it, and that will be it. So another big question about this episode has to be, there have been rumours of a certain character returning, a Mr. Captain Jack Harkness, a Mr. Captain, played by John Barrowman. Obviously, he returned in the last series, about halfway through, for a very, very quick cameo. Didn't meet the Doctor, though, which to me definitely felt like they were teeing up for this is Jack and the Doctor meeting in another episode. And then there were all these, there was this behind-the-scenes video released, which seemed to show him, basically hanging out on set with the cast in a way that suggested he could be in this episode. Again, that hasn't been confirmed. It could have been that was shot during the time that he was doing his cameo, or, maybe he was just around, John Barrowman, he loves Doctor Who. But, we've talked about the Doctor being in prison. We've talked about how she's going to get out. And you do kind of wonder, last time we saw him, Jack had stolen the ship, was running away. Could this be how they kind of meet up? Is Jack going to be her cellie? He'll be in the in the cell one over. I mean, my one sort of slight caveat with this, I'm sort of like, is there a lot to fit in this episode? They've already got the Doctor sort of thrown in jail somewhere. They've got all these Daleks turning up. Is kind of adding Jack in as well too much? Because even in Fugitive of the Judoon, he's there a little bit, and it's a big moment, and it feels like quite a lot. And I'm just sort of like, would he even fit? I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think I think you're right, and I think that there is a lot to get through in this episode, and I think that's why the Doctor won't be spending all that long locked up, because you've got at some point to get the Doctor back to Earth. You've got to at some point presumably explore this idea of a Dalek civil war, which the unofficial set photos seem to be teeing up. You've got to get Captain Jack in there as well. There's hopefully going to be some subplots as well for the companions. Like you mentioned, Amanda Gill said that Yaz is struggling, and I think she's spoken a bit as well about how this episode, and I presume the series 13 episodes to come, will delve a little bit more into Yaz's struggles with her mental health, which is something that was highlighted in the last series in Can You Hear Me? So it's good to hear that thread won't be dropped. And, it is the kind of experience that might kind of hit you hard and set you back, being separated from the Doctor and being sort of stranded on Earth. She thinks her journeys are at an end. So there's a lot to get through in this episode, which again implies to me that I think the Doctor may well be set free in quite quick succession, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think you're probably on the money there that Jack will play a part in that. It certainly seems like it would be a great dynamic way for him to return, busting the Doctor out of space prison.
That'd be great. I've also just remembered something else that is rumoured to be happening in this episode. We're talking about a lot of rumours, so sorry to anyone who loves the hard facts, but we love the rumours. There have been whispers for a while that we might be seeing some cast apart in this episode. First off, people were saying that Tosin Cole, who plays Ryan, might be leaving, partly because he booked a big role in a US TV show. Although, now maybe he did find time to film that after all, I don't know. And also that Bradley Walsh, who plays Graham, could be on the way out as well. There's a little caveat to this, which is that during the New York Comic Con panel, Bradley Walsh said, the next series is unbelievable, you're all going to love it, which sort of suggests that he's still around or still involved or has read some scripts.
Yeah. There's a few options there, isn't there? One is, the sort of the easiest one is that he's just lying. Like he doesn't want to give away that he's not involved in Series 13, so he's just sort of saying, "Oh yeah, it's going to be great." But he could have just, kept quiet there and let Jodie field that question, or Mandip, who's apparently also sticking around, field that question. But then the other, again, another rumor. But the other rumor, isn't it, is that although Graham and Ryan may be stepping away from the TARDIS crew as sort of full-time members, they may recur throughout the next series, which would make sense then if Bradley Walsh had read some Series 13 scripts. And if it's not a complete overhaul and Yaz is staying on, she obviously has quite close personal relationships with Graham and Ryan, so it might seem slightly odd if, particularly if their ending is that they end up just back in Sheffield. It would seem slightly odd that she wouldn't ever pop in to see them, or that they would now be totally cut out of her life. So I think, potentially we could see going forward Tosin Cole and Bradley Walsh as supporting cast members as opposed to leads who are in the show every week.
Definitely. A little like, when Freema Agyeman left and still sort of popped up for a few episodes. And, like John Barrowman, I guess.
Yeah. I just really want to see Bradley Walsh going, Doctor, it's Graham. I'm bringing you back to Earth. That's what I want.
Doc.
Doc, it's Doc. Graham. Yeah. Doc, it's Graham. I'm bringing you back to Earth.
Yeah.
Got to make it happen. Also, something else Bradley Walsh said, which he may just be, a turn of phrase, but he said it's going to be a series of Titanic proportions, which may just be a turn of phrase, may just be, it's a series. It's an enormous
series.
On
a ship.
Or no, but was it a little clue? I mean, obviously, they already did. Was it Voyage of the Damned with the kind of Titanic in space? But I wonder if he was slipping us a little clue, but possibly not. Maybe that's just wild speculation.
I do feel sorry for these poor actors who are just there, sort of chatting away merrily, and they were there like looking at Hansard, pulling apart their every single statement, like lawyers trying to work out exactly what it could all mean.
They have, these actors have been on Doctor Who for a little while now, like a couple of years. They should know by now that every single syllable they utter as part of these public appearances is going to be picked apart by fans and by the likes of us.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons, like you say, that I was wondering about whether these rumours are true, is because we have had this same TARDIS team on Doctor Who for a while now. It's been 2 series with the same sort of status quo, which isn't, out of the question, but we do tend to get a bit more of in the modern series, a bit more of a turnover of Doctors or companions. So
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if there is a bit of, we don't know this, but if it does feel like it wouldn't be a bad time, not that we want anyone to leave particularly, but for, just to have a bit of a mix up of the Doctor Who status quo.
Yeah, I think there's sort of pros and cons to having companions stay on long term with Doctor Who, and the pros are obvious in that you get to kind of develop the characters a little more, and they get to grow, but I think again, I think it was Stephen Moffat who sort of said that pretty much every series he did, there would either be a new Doctor or a new companion, because then you've got something to sell the series on, particularly as Doctor Who. It's no longer kind of flashy and new. I don't want to say that Doctor Who is becoming part of the furniture, but it's certainly not it's not as new and flashy as it once was. It's not news anymore that Doctor Who is back. So you do need to find a way to sell it, if you like, with each new series. And you go, look, it's a big deal. So you need kind of something that's new, whether that be a new Doctor or a new companion, someone that you can put out to the press and go, look, something new and flashy about this. So yeah, again, it may be, particularly if they brought in a new companion alongside the Doctor and Yaz, it may well be like a good time to give Doctor Who like another promotional boost that it sort of arguably hasn't had since Jodie took over and since the beginning of the Chris Chibnall era.
Definitely. I mean, definitely that first series had such a boost because it was the first female Doctor and this whole new TARDIS team. And it was all new team, very exciting. And series 2, I think the kind of thing they leaned into for series 2 was, now we're bringing some of the monsters back. The Cybermen are going to be in this one. There's some other stuff. And obviously with hindsight, we can see the whole year was kind of, now we're making things bigger. We're bringing back the Master. There's Cybermen, there's this other Doctor. With hindsight, we can see what they were kind of doing with that. But yeah, I do think it gets harder to kind of sell it if nothing changes. You're not like, oh, here's the new thing to check out. Well, here's the new angle. It's like, no, Doctor Who's just still on.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's more challenging.
You never want it to be Doctor Who's still on. You want it to be Doctor Who's back and there's something new and exciting about it. So, and a cast refresh is a quick and easy way. Well, maybe not easy, but it's it's a quite simple way of achieving that.
Definitely. So maybe we will see that at Christmas. Who knows? All we know is we'll see the Doctor in a very natty jumpsuit. There'll be some people sitting around a table looking glum. There may be some Daleks, ... And that's about it. And we don't know when it's on. One of the interesting things that came out of that was, that panel was, they said it will be shown over the festive period, which was sort of announced as if it was a new thing. We kind of knew that it was going to be, the sort of time it normally is, which is either Christmas Day or New Year's Day or sometime in between. We don't know which yet. I would kind of be inclined. I know some people have speculated that because of the lockdown and the lack of other TV being made, Doctor Who could shift back to Christmas Day, where it was for a number of years. I'm inclined to think that they'll probably stay on New Year's Day if that's what they intended, just because they probably wouldn't have made it Christmassy.
Yeah, no. I would agree as well. I think there was a short period where it looked like nothing was going to get filmed before Christmas, and I was like, well, if Doctor Who's the only thing in the can, maybe they will put it on Christmas Day, just because you got to put something on Christmas Day on BBC One. But actually, you know what? Now they filmed the Call the Midwife special.
They're fine. They're like, no worries.
I'm like, yeah, no, that's what I'm thinking. BBC One have kind of got Christmas Day sewn up, so Doctor Who can stay on New Year's Day. So I agree with you. I think it will stay January the 1st.
Yeah. And, I think that's kind of, it gives us something to look forward to in 2021. Get it off to a better start, maybe.
Hopefully, yeah. Start as you mean to go on. Yeah, fingers crossed. And, and they are going to be hopefully rolling cameras on Series 13 before the end of the year as well. So when Doctor Who, kicks off 2021, we'll know that hopefully as well. There are new episodes being filmed at that time as well.
And it does seem likely that we'll have had some Doctor Who every year in terms of, we had one special in 2019, we had a full series at the beginning of 2020, one special at the beginning of 2021. And even if we don't get more episodes then until 2022, technically we've had Doctor Who within a year of itself pretty much every time.
Yeah. They always just about manage to sort of inch their way in.
Yeah. I should say as well, I think, as much as we put fun and stuff, I think I'm pretty excited to see this episode. It's nice to kind of know that this was put together pre-lockdown, and it's weird, I'm sort of hoping that it's a bit momentous because it feels like it might be a while before we get the main series back. I'm kind of like, I hope this isn't just a sort of one-off fun. I kind of hope it feeds into the wider mythos a bit. Do you know what I mean? I kind of want it to be a bit weighty.
Well, yeah, and like there's that issue you say that we don't know after this when Doctor Who will return. It's probably, let's face it, going to be a longer gap than usual. So you kind of want it to be something a bit special, but also for obvious reasons, 2020 has felt very long. And so it feels like a long time since we had Doctor Who, right? Like I people say, oh yeah, series 12 aired earlier this year. It aired in 2020. It's like, did it? Because that feels like so long ago that the last series of Doctor Who aired. So much obviously has happened since. So it's been a long time coming, this special, even though it was always going to air round about when it's going to air. And there may well be a long gap after it. So I hope it is something a bit special. Fingers crossed. I mean, it's got a lot of exciting ingredients in there. You've got the Doctor, you say, locked away. You could potentially explore the psychological ramifications of that. You can explore what's happened to the companions and kind of center them as the leads. And you've got Captain Jack, and you've got 2 different types of Daleks. I think, it's got all the ingredients there to be something a bit special. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah. I think it should be fun, and I think all the speculation leading up to it is going to be just as fun. This isn't even our first episode of the podcast speculating about what's going to happen in the festive special. We did one right at the end of series 12 as well, so we'll probably do more between now and Christmas / New Year as well. You can read some of that stuff on radiotimes.com. As I said, we did a piece about how long's the Doctor been in the Judoon prison, which you can read. We've got some breakdowns of some of the new photos and some of the quotes from the cast. And loads of other Doctor Who stuff. We have quite a lot. We, have loads of Doctor Who news and features, old and new. And obviously, if you want to check out back editions of this podcast, they're all on radiotimes.com's YouTube channel. And we might put some of them up on other platforms as well, once we can work out how. It's all a bit experimental, this, for us. But thank you so much for listening. Until next time, I've been Hugh Fullerton.
I've been Morgan Jeffrey.
And this has been the radiotimes.com Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye.